Vogliamo solo provare la traduzione, fra 2 o 3 minuti cominciamo. Il canale primo è in italiano, il secondo canale è in lingua inglese. Sì, se provate a accendere le cuffie. Allora, dicevo, il primo canale in italiano, il secondo canale in inglese, il terzo canale in francese, il quarto in arabo, il quinto in tedesco. Funzionano? Sì, l'italiano funziona, l'inglese, francese. Ora stiamo ancora attendendo l'ultimo, cioè l'ultimo sarà il primo relatore in ordine alfabetico. Abbiate pazienza. L'arabo funziona? Allora, spero di sì. Sempre annunci tecnici, mi chiedono di ricordarvi di consegnare tutte le cuffie quando uscite, riconsegnarle lì dove le avete prese all'ingresso. Ancora qualche minuto di pazienza e cominceremo. Buongiorno.
Good morning and welcome to our forum, which follows yesterday's opening meeting. I would like to thank you for being here with us. I would like to express my appreciation and my gratitude for this highly diversified audience following our meeting. And I can also see many young people attending. They come from schools and universities in Rome. We have representatives from 40 different countries belonging to different world religions. So we have all converged here, united in hope. The hope to once again find others. This is the title of the forum. After having set off again together and after having listened to some very authoritative words yesterday's, which point to the future, a future which will look different from the present that we have today. Yesterday, we have heard that the pandemic has raised many important and radical issues. We shall never go back to the world as we knew it in the past, but we can look forward to a better world in the future. So creativity and the depth of the words that we shall listen to today are like building bricks in the building of a common edifice where our words and the beliefs will be a wealth and an asset. They will not divide us but unite us. So we wanted to find and re-find others because history has taught us that clashes, fractures, distance, prejudice may seriously undermine the unity of the human family. Each collective identity is the outcome of a specific history of a search for the future as well. We know that we need to tackle the hot issues of pandemic. Otherwise, we shall not be able to accommodate the right to one's own beliefs, the right to security, and all the other rights which were underscored yesterday. Otherwise, we can look forward to some very dire future prospects. No one is saved alone, so how can we once again find others? Today's speakers are highly authoritative. I will introduce them one by one, and we shall try to ask them to speak in alphabetical order, so that the moderator's job is made easier. And we shall each speak for 10 minutes. And then we know that our participants may ask to take the floor, and members of delegations who have come from afar have precedence in this. So anyone asking for the floor can do so and speak for 3 minutes, and then at the end of this discussion we can see if there is any time left for additional Q&A. But let me now give the floor to our first rapporteur, Nuba Afeyan. Already the surname sheds light on his origin, Armenian, of Armenian heritage, naturalized in the US. He's an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, an inventor. He is very well known because he has co-founded the Moderna biotechnology company, which he has chaired since 2009. His family has suffered the tragedies which occurred last year. He has earned his PhD at the Center for Bioprocessing and Engineering of MIT. He has patented hundreds of inventions. He's a teacher at the Harvard Business School. So it's a great pleasure to give him the floor. Without any further ado, we look forward to hearing what he has to say. We know that a crucial role is played today by research. For example, in the case of vaccines, it's going to be very important to make vaccines available worldwide. So let me thank him for being here today, and let me thank him for having contributed to the future of humankind. We know that he will enrich us with his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here. Your Holiness, Eminences, Excellencies, religious and civilian authorities, and gathered friends. I want to express my deep gratitude for the opportunity to address this esteemed audience of faith leaders and other humanitarians. The events that lead me to be here with you today trace back to the second decade of the last century. Starting in 1915, 1.5 million ethnic Armenians were brutally massacred by the Ottoman Empire under the pretext of the First World War. I stand here today because saviors converted my paternal grandfather into a survivor, protecting him and helping him eventually escape from certain death. In 2015, the centennial commemoration of the Armenian Genocide, together with philanthropist Ruben Vartanian, who's here with me today, and the late Vartan Gregorian, the president of Carnegie Corporation, we launched the Aurora Prize and Humanitarian Initiative to celebrate saviors and honor survivors in today's conflicts and global strife. We created this movement to honor those who saved our ancestors' lives a century ago by enabling the work of modern-day heroes. This Saturday, the Aurora Prize laureate for 2021 will be announced at a ceremony at San Lazzaro Island in Venice, the site of a 300-year-old Armenian monastery. Even while the Ottoman Turks wreaked their murderous havoc on the Armenian people, another cataclysmic event shaped the context in which we gather today. The world was once again beset by a murderous force, a deadly and highly infectious virus that came to be called the Spanish flu. The millions of deaths that followed brought new insights of how viruses spread and how they can be controlled. But as we have experienced recently, we failed to heed the lessons of that time and prepare adequately for future pandemics. Still, just as the survivors of the genocide owed their lives to the saviors whose bravery and humanity helped them to safety, the survivors of both the Spanish flu and COVID-19 pandemic owe their survival to the saviors who restlessly innovate and imagine in ways that advance science. Those scientists and innovators stand on the shoulders of the survivors that came before them and their willingness to leap to unknown places. Literally, their faith in the unknown, their hope in the unseen, allows millions more people to not only survive and revive, but ultimately thrive. My earliest understandings of faith and hope relate to the rituals of the Armenian baptism. The priest asks the Godfather what the baptized child wants, and the answer is faith, hope, love, and baptism. The first use of the word Savior was, of course, in a religious context. Another term for our Savior, Jesus Christ. The story of Christ and the expectation of his return is a profound invitation to have faith in possibility, to work towards a better future and make impossible things possible. Without belief and without faith, it is hard to leap. It is hard to innovate, to imagine better for our shared humanity, and to have impact. When the pandemic began to spread across the globe early last year, leaping became a matter of life and death, literally of saving and surviving. Scientists at Moderna, the biotechnology company I co-founded that pioneered the use of mRNA, had for a decade worked to perfect the use of messenger RNA as a medicine, leaping to a largely unexplored area of scientific possibility with the faith that if proven and perfected, this technology could change the face of medicine and save countless lives. Last January, Moderna was asked to shift its resources and research towards urgently developing an mRNA vaccine for COVID-19. And we took yet another leap to shift the majority of our clinical efforts to answering that call. Building on 10 years of research, perfecting drug development, and applying all our focus and energies, Moderna was able to develop a safe and effective vaccine faster than any time in human history. Last January, just 2 days after we knew the genetic sequence of the novel coronavirus, we had the design of our mRNA vaccine. And just 42 days later, we delivered the first doses to the National Institutes of Health in the US for testing. The first Moderna shot went into a volunteer's arm in Seattle on March 16, 2020. We tested the vaccine with a diverse group of 30,000 volunteers, and 9 months later, the FDA authorized our vaccine for emergency use. 3 days after that, the first Moderna vaccines were administered to frontline health workers. As we stand here today, more than 1 billion doses of mRNA vaccines have been deployed across the globe, and it is estimated that hundreds of thousands of lives may have been saved and millions of infections prevented. We are not stopping there. Moderna plans to increase its capacity from less than 1 billion doses in 2021 to up to 3 billion in 2022 to meet the demand for its COVID vaccine. And thanks to our recently established partnership with COVAX, we also plan to supply 500 million vaccine doses to the world's lowest income countries. And just a few hours ago, Moderna made a public announcement that makes me enormously proud. We announced our commitment to building a state-of-the-art mRNA facility in Africa with the goal of producing with the goal of producing up to 500 million doses of vaccine each year. We anticipate investing up to $500 million in this new facility. From the beginning, our mission at Moderna has been to make a transformative impact on human lives through our pioneering medicines, and today's announcement represents yet another leap in our effort to make a difference. We view Moderna's work in combating the COVID-19 crisis as only the beginning of what we can contribute. I personally also view this important development as a great example of what at Aurora we call gratitude in action. With the Aurora Initiative, we honor survivors by celebrating saviors. And we recognize that when those at risk of death and dislocation can not only survive but thrive, they can then go on to become saviors of others, themselves. Those who have survived loss, dislocation, danger, and disruption emerge with tools and mindsets that make them well-suited to innovation. They can imagine a new world because they've had to inhabit a world unfamiliar to their own. They can invent with alacrity and imagination because they've had to literally reinvent their lives, often in an entirely new place or context. In short, when we survive and revive, we can imagine, invent, and innovate new ways to save others. The messenger RNA vaccines that are helping turn the tide of this pandemic are miraculous. Or perhaps in the company of so many esteemed leaders of the Church, I should say just short of miraculous. They allow a safe and effective information molecule to train our immune system to fight the virus and then disappear from our bodies. The science that brought these vaccines to life were in many cases pioneered by survivors, immigrants, refugees, and, as in my case, descendants of those who survived atrocities, whether those be wars or slavery or Holocaust or genocide. The virtuous cycle in which the saving and surviving results in more saving is one we celebrate and perpetuate with the Aurora Prize and carry lessons that apply to all of us in how we govern and how we live our lives. Now, I have used the word savior many times today. It is interesting that when the word savior came into the greater usage around the globe, it eventually replaced the Old English word heiland, literally healing. If we are to protect our health and preempt disease, if we are to heal our ailing planet, it will require saviors, intrepid humanitarians who step in and step up and protect others so that they might survive and thrive. It will also take survivors who bring humanity the gifts of resilience and imagination and reinvention that fuel discovery and with it progress. And finally, it will require science, an unraveling of the mysteries of the universe and the exploration of the unknown that can yield new paths to surviving and thriving. We can either work in the present and accept the future that results from it, or we can marry our faith in possibility, our hope in the unseen, to the bravery and imagination to invent the future we want to see. That guiding influence, which requires faith, commitment, collaboration, and a lifelong struggle, is at once a spiritual one and the key to make leaps of faith. If we make these leaps together with gratitude in our hearts and with hope in the unseen possibilities, we can cure diseases, ease conflict, and save our planet. Thank you.
Credo che siamo tutti
We're all fully aware of the significance of this commitment that Noubar Afeyan has been witness to, and this is something that the whole world is grateful for. And of course, we welcome the announcement to ensure that Africa will be provided with the vaccines it requires. We're also aware that the absence of a universalist vision could bring in its wake even worse results unless we assist those countries to defend themselves. If this is not done, new variants will affect us. We are one and a single human family. And in Noubar Afeyan's remarks, I was particularly struck by what he said. Survivors, the wounded, those who have been disrupted, displaced, those who still bear the wounds of pain, are those who can turn that pain into empathy, intelligence, and solidarity. And in so doing, they can change the course of things. And the future is not just about the painful past, but it is also about our ability to build together an alternative to hate, isolation, aggression. And so thank you once again, not just for your words, but also for your commitment and for this better future that we can look forward to, thanks to your contribution as well. Thank you. And now we are very happy to welcome a very dear friend, the Lutheran Bishop Heinrich Bedford-Strom, with whom we have fought side by side for migrants and refugees in Europe and more. We share the same vision, a vision of hope, and we have not given up
in the face of our contemporary challenges. Bishop Heinrich Bedford Sturm is the chair of the Council of the Evangelical Church in Germany, the EKD, and Lutherans look to him as an inspiring figure, but for all Christian communities, he is a fellow traveller towards a better future. Heinrich, over to you. Thank you so much for having joined us.
Well, thank you very much for these friendly words at the beginning. This is a very moving conference, a very moving day, and the theme of today's forum is really how can we reform community after the pandemic. And one has to really realize what we have experienced in the last year, all those forms in which we show each other our love, our connectedness, hugs, handshakes, touching each other, coming close to each other. All those forms have become the enemy of love. That's a paradox. It's almost traumatic for our relationships to experience this. And maybe you have the same feeling as I, to see each other again, at least come together again, and sometimes with all rules, touch each other, talk to each other. It's so wonderful. So I think the question of this forum is indeed a crucial question. And I want to just envision with a few words, what path should we go when we try to reform community? There are different possible paths. There is a path that says the individual is in the center. It's sometimes in the center of modern society, as we call it, and with a tendency that it's almost egoism that shapes our communities. On the other hand, there is a path to say, let's go back to the old forms of community, the homogeneous communities where everyone shares a very strong, sometimes even strict or rigid value cosmos, and a community that is also shaped by hierarchy, by obeying certain rules, rather than living from freedom. That is a second path. And the third path, and you can see from the way I introduce it, that is the one I want to explore. The third path is to balance, to connect, to unite freedom on one hand and community on the other hand. That is what I want to explore. I think religions can play a very important role in finding this way of dealing with our modern freedom in a way that is not detrimental to community. One of the characteristics of our societies as they develop is called pluralization. It simply means that we are members of many, many communities. It's not only one community anymore. If I, as a father, think of what my communities were when I had children, that was especially many. The sports club, 3 sons, 3 soccer clubs with 3 Christmas celebrations and 3 summer celebrations, my neighborhood, my family, all the school and the professional colleagues. I could go on. Many, many communities in which I was a member. And of course, for each community, I did not have as much time as I would have had if it had been basically one community. So, in a certain way, you can speak of almost an explosion of communities through these modern societal aspects. But they're different. They're not as they were. They are much more shaped by what sociologists call weak ties rather than strong ties. The example for strong ties, of course, is the family, and we need it. It's absolutely important. Also, maybe a strong basis in the church, in your religious community. But even there, it is clear that there's also a clear place for weak ties, as the sociologists call it. It sounds negative, but in a way, it's very positive. Because weak ties are ties where you meet people casually, maybe every week, and it gives a form of community that we might call network today more, that is not as strong as your family or the basic communities, but that is very important for bridging your communities to each other, for not forming one rigid single community, but as the title of our forum says, widening the horizon, rediscovering others. That is what weak ties make possible. To give you an example, if you look for a job, and I've experienced that at the soccer field with my sons, somebody was looking for a job. He got the job not through the family, through the strong ties, but through the weak ties. He was giving the message, I need a job. And sometime somebody heard it and said, I know a job. So he got the job through the weak ties. And when I thought about the pandemic and the consequences of the pandemic, I realized it's the weak ties, the important weak ties that were most damaged in that past year of the pandemic. The families, the strong communities, they have a resilience, much bigger resilience. You don't lose your family if you haven't seen each other for a long time. But if you cannot go to all those communities that you're used to be going, then, for example, a choir, because you were not allowed to rehearse, then you might lose that community. So the challenge is not only in the strong communities, it's also in those weak ties that we rediscover, as the title says, rediscover the others in those weak ties. So what I want to say is, let's care also for those weak ties, because there are bridge relationships into other communities which are essential for us in pluralistic societies. So the place where those weak ties are maybe most visible but also most at risk are the social internet, the social media internet communities. The weakest possible tie is the like button at Facebook. You just push a button and you're connected with someone, but it's very weak. And we have seen that those internet networks have very great chances, like aid actions have been organized through Facebook or other internet networks. And when I'm somewhere in the world, I post a photo for my family, and they know where they are, they know how I feel just that moment. So it's a wonderful way of strengthening community, even through the internet. But we all know that at the same time, it's a very risky thing, because the algorithms in those social media, in Facebook, for example, the algorithms are programmed in a way that is supposed to increase the profit, which is advertisement time. And the extreme contents, the lies, the nonsense, the radical things, they are preferred by the algorithms because people stay so long on those contents, even if they're complete nonsense. Which means that we think when we use the internet, at some point we think that's normal. Like really putting down people, hate, all these things. And I think one of the big challenges for community nowadays, and also after the pandemic, where this has been a big problem too, is really taming those social media, trying to set rules that make those social media responsible to our basic values like human dignity. Then the second characteristic of our modern societies is individualization. Often people think that means single existence, egoism, and putting yourself against others. I think individualization is first of all a good thing, because we create our communities out of our free will, because we want to. People, volunteers at Sant'Egidio, they do not do these things because their parents have forced them, but because maybe their parents were a role model. And they get involved from their free decision, and that's good. So the challenge is, how can you live in free societies and commit yourself to communities? Martin Luther, that is a person important for my tradition, has begun his famous treatise on Christian liberty with two theses. A Christian is a free master of all things and subject to none. And the second thesis, a Christian is a free servant of each things and subject to everyone. What Luther wants to say is this freedom of speech, of conscience is very important, but it can never be put against getting engaged for your neighbor. So love and freedom are intimately connected to each other, and I try to stop this. It's the reminder of the time. So this is, I think, the path to go, that we rediscover our sources as Christians or as people of other religions, to give our internal motivation into this try to rediscover community. So freedom and community are not a contradiction, but belong to each other. So reciprocal interpretation of both. So I think that community today is the challenge to care for those who are not able to create their own communities, maybe the unemployed, the poor, who need support, assistance for participating in society. And I think church congregations can be expressions of this understanding of community and liberty as fruitful a relationship to each other. They can be vital actors of a global civil society that gets engaged for peace, justice, integrity of creation, because I think that the church is an absolutely unique network, and I say this for other religious communities too, but I speak for the church, deeply rooted in local communities everywhere in the world, but at the same time having this universal horizon in the confession of Christ, in the common belief in the one God, the one creator of this world. I think we need exactly these kind of agents in our global civil society in order to rediscover community, not in a narrow, separated form, but in an open form with a widened horizon. And I think this meeting, to conclude, this meeting is an impressive example for exactly what we need after the pandemic: concrete commitment for human dignity in local communities, and at the same time, public commitment for human dignity all over the world with this global horizon. And I'm deeply grateful for this daily commitment as a concrete response to this question of today: widening horizon, rediscovering the others. So thank you, Sant'Egidio, for this involvement.
Grazie Heinrich, non solo per le parole generose sul nostro impegno, ma anche perché ha indicato nelle relazioni deboli, che non è solo qualcosa che riguarda i social, ma nelle relazioni deboli una opportunità per costruire una comunità di interessi che non escludano i poveri, perché nelle relazioni deboli i poveri sono i primi ad aver bisogno di compagni di strada e forse cominciando dai più fragili si può costruire un mondo migliore per tutti. E naturalmente la libertà del cristiano, le parole di Lutero, io credo che non appartengano solo alla tradizione luterana, ma alla verità cristiana. Essere liberi, quindi non sottoposti, non conformisti, non soggiogati al mainstream, ai grandi poteri, ma allo stesso tempo servi di ciascuno e di tutti. L'universalità umile dei cristiani è questo: essere anche audaci di fronte a visioni del mondo maggioritarie, quindi sentire però che questa diversità umile è un servizio di un servizio alla comunità. Quindi grazie anche per l'impegno di Heinrich Bedford Strom nell'aiutare le chiese cristiane a vivere questa universalità. E sono molto felice ora di dare la parola a Sua Santità Carichine II, il Catholicos di tutti gli armeni. Saluto anche il Patriarca armeno di Istanbul, Saak Masalyan, e tutti gli amici della delegazione da Surpec Miazin, dalla sede del Catholicos. Si possono vedere in lontananza l'Ararat e dalle finestre. Ieri è stato citato da Welby il diluvio universale. Dal diluvio universale si esce lasciandosi guidare dalla parola di Dio e si esce credendo nel futuro e approdando a un futuro di pace. L'Ararat è identificato come il monte dove l'arca si sarebbe appoggiata. Allora, noi cerchiamo un futuro di pace, cerchiamo un futuro anche in cui la terra, il dono della terra, del creato, preservino tutti e sia preservata, perché tutti abbiamo un futuro. Le lasciamo la parola, Santità, ascoltandola con gioia. Grazie di essere qui. È la seconda volta che Sua Santità è presente ai nostri incontri di preghiera per la pace. Grazie.
Honorable Chair of the Forum, dear participants of the Forum. With gratitude to God, we're pleased to welcome this latest in the series of conferences devoted to interreligious and intercultural dialogue organized by the community of Sant'Egidio. We bring our blessings and appreciation to the organizers and initiators. Through their dedicated efforts, we have the opportunity to gather again today to share our concerns and perceptions of mutual understanding and acceptance among different religions and cultures. Despite our diverse historical experiences, the existence of religious, cultural, and outlook differences, we are all children of one God, brothers and sisters united by the love of God. And our union of love in this diversity is the validating evidence of being a child of God. The awareness of the unconditional love of God is the foundation of mutual understanding and of the conviction that all the people, as children of God, have the sacred right to peaceful, free, and independent life established by the Almighty. Actions that contradict these aspirations today narrow the possibilities and horizons of fully understanding and acknowledging one another. Such actions of the people created by the same God close their hearts and minds, blind their ears, and block their ears, making them indifferent to each other's pain, misfortunes, troubles, and common global challenges. There is no place for enmity and division in this God-given love and brotherhood, which to this day continue to challenge human society by wars and terrorism, religious hatred and discrimination. Every day, many of our brothers and sisters in the world are exposed to various expressions of violence, impelled by the mania for possession and injustice, which causes spiritual emptiness that generates hatred. The history of our nation, having survived genocide, was often written with the blood of martyrs and witnesses to faith. Therefore, we know well the value of love, brotherhood, friendship of peoples, peaceful and secure life. And we sympathize with our brothers and sisters who are suffering, for as the Apostle Paul said, God, and he has made from one blood every nation of men to dwell in all the face of the earth. Last year, our country and people were exposed to such a challenge when Azerbaijan again unleashed a war against the Artsakh Republic with the support of Turkey and terrorist groups. During the 44-day war, prohibited weapons were used, even against the civilian population of Artsakh. Thousands have died, been wounded, became disabled. Tens of thousands have been driven from their homes. Churches and monasteries, cultural monuments were destroyed and desecrated, which continued even during the post-war period. Many have become prisoners of war, including innocent civilians, who continue to be exposed to humiliation and this indescribable torture, despite continuous appeals of the international community, church organizations, and humanitarian organizations to release them. We want to mention here that the warfare brought tragedy not only to our people, but also to Azerbaijan, the country that unleashed the war, as they also had many casualties. The 44 days long bloody war was stopped by the efforts of Mr. Vladimir Putin, the President of the Russian Federation. We believe that through the mediative mission of the OSCE Minsk Group, the Artsakh issue will be resolved. The Azerbaijani aggression against our people of Artsakh and such crimes against other nations must certainly be strictly condemned by all the international community so that such tragedies may not take place again in the lives of people. Dear sisters and brothers, there is a need for global concern and global efforts to improve our common home, planet Earth. For the peace to reign and to regulate our interactions towards happiness in accordance with the message of our Savior, be at peace with one another. The ways of peace based on mutual understanding and acceptance are not easy, but always possible if there is the will and aspiration to serve the global welfare and pursue peaceful and creative life with an honest and pure soul. The children of our people living in the four corners of the earth in peaceful cohabitation with other nations bring a great witness to the efficacy of the dialogue of cultures and religions. And we believe that the prophetic words will be fulfilled thanks to love for each other and cooperation, when nations shall be their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. We pray for hearts and minds of all people to open, reaffirming human beings in their true calling and purpose to be co-creators in the restoration of human life. May God hear our prayer, strengthen us in our mission, bless all honest efforts for peace and solidarity among peoples. May the grace, love, and peace of God be with us all, now and forever. Amen.
Grazie.
Thank you very much, Your Holiness. From this wounded church, we have heard how this present-day sorrows prompt us to have a different vision. So this wounded church is witness to the cross. I have often been to Armenia, and I have learned that in Armenia the various crosses have flourished and blossomed. On the cross, we don't just have the body of Christ crucified. They have given fruit. They have blossomed. They have given rise to resurrection. So we would like to thank the Lord for all the witnesses, all those who in the Armenian church can convey the strength of their spirituality. Pope Francis, during his apostolic trip in 2016, mentioned Saint Gregory the Erector. This spiritual strength is a wealth for each and all of us today. So thank you very much for your presence. Thank you for your words, and we can walk together and go towards a future of peace and reconciliation. Thank you. And now we have a cardinal from the Catholic Church, Jose Tolentino da Mendoza, a close friend, someone who has a very important role in today's church. He is an archivist in the Holy Roman Church. He is a scholar, he is a university professor, he has a long academic career behind him, and is also a voice of present-day Catholicism, who knows how to interact with the world of culture. He has published many different works, also in the field of poetry, because beauty has a role in theology and in the way in which we can approach Christian life and making it more human. So thank you very much, Cardinal Jose Tolentino Mendoza. We are very happy to hear his words today. I would like to express brotherly greetings to all other participants, to all friends who are present here today. In particular, I would like to welcome the many young people who are attending our forum today. I would like to briefly mention a conference, or rather a lecture, which was held in 2016 by the sociologist Bauman. This was during the Assisi prayer meeting in 2016, and this was a sort of legacy for future generations. On that occasion, Bauman, who at the time was 91 years old, this was just a few months before he died. Anyway, on that occasion, he started reflecting on past and future humankind, and he gave us a history of the pronoun we or us. And what he said was that this very crucial and important word started being used in a much more narrow sense than what we have today, because in ancient times human groups could protect their own identity by creating a very small groupings, very small communities. So at the beginning of history, when the word we was used, it probably referred to just 100 people, more or less, just about 100 individuals. This is what was meant when people said we. And early human beings were not even able to say we at the very beginning of human history, because at the time humankind was made up by groups of hunter-gatherers who traveled together and worked together trying to find food for their group. And we was cut short very abruptly at the borders of the group. Everything else was them, the others, and they were seen as enemies. Then, gradually, the pronoun we referred to an increasingly large number of people, and then we were able to have the emergence of new notions, tribe, community, nation, and empire. From the strictly local, we shifted on to the global. And Bauman, in describing the history dynamics, stressed two key principles. First, civilization building in the past as in our present time has always occurred with an alternating focus on inclusion and exclusion. And then the second principle is that civilization was able to make progress only when it widened its own boundaries, so that inclusion could be encouraged to the detriment of exclusion. That's why Bauman stated that our future depends on our capacity to expand the pronoun we, us, reducing instead the space left for them. This is something that we can only achieve if we are really able to build a society which is more empathetic, which is more human and more dialogic. In one of the philosopher Wittgenstein's writings, we can find a crude metaphor which unfortunately may well epitomize our present-day situation. Wittgenstein, this philosopher, says that we are like someone who is looking at the world through a closed window. We can see the shadow of passersby, and we cannot, however, understand their odd movements. In actual fact, we feel sheltered because we are in our home, and we are closed off in our own vision, and what we cannot see is that there is a storm outside, and that these passers-by can only keep themselves on their feet with great effort. So the world that we sometimes see today is based on a vision which occurs through the opaque glasses of a closed window. So there may be misperceptions. We know that there is an opposition, a dualistic opposition, and this encourages fear and hostility without instead promoting openness, hospitality, a perception of a common good. The truth of the matter is that our societies must learn to start using the first plural, we instead of I, involving citizens in a more hopeful and fraternal dimension, as is being taught by Pope Francis in his recent Fratelli Tutti, because we are just one single human family. We know that the experience of the pandemic will only have saved the purpose if mechanisms have been activated which can help us construct an us, a we, which are based on the awareness that we're all in the same boat, as Pope Francis said. No one is saved alone, said Pope Francis. Instead of saying them, we should be able to say we, So we have the poor, we have those who have been left behind, we have those who are more disadvantaged. We have young people who have no future prospects. We have the elderly who are considered to be a burden by our societies. Well, looking at all of these groups, we should be able to say we. When we speak of migrants and refugees, we should be able to say we, because we should be able to acknowledge that there is here a common human condition. So we had this lecture which was held by Bauman, as I said, a legacy for future generations. And Bauman on that occasion reminded us that we have not as yet found the instruments which can help us truly implement the us, the we. And I think that this is a very urgent task that we should all accept, rediscovering the word we or us. And I'm addressing the young people who are present here today. Your generation has this fundamental task, rediscovering the meaning, the incredible possibilities of this primeval word, the pronoun we.
Grazie, Eminenza.
Thank you very much for this extremely clear and insightful address, and for having reminded us of such an important philosopher such as Zygmunt Bauman. The light at the end of the tunnel is exactly what he referred to when he spoke to Pope Francis. And he, having lived so long, had understood the tragedies that can stem from the I, unable to find the we. And in Assisi, he said, Holy Father, you help me see the light. And we don't have the right instruments to ensure that we can guarantee that we look beyond the I to the we. But since the very beginning, the spirit of Assisi has helped us seek for this together. Here we represent different peoples, different faiths, different scientific thinking and research, and we are here to serve a higher good. That glazed window through which it is impossible to see has actually enabled us to understand what unites us rather than only what divides us. And we have also, once again, understood that it is our common responsibility to think about the future, and we would like to pay a tribute to the young people who have joined us today. And to all these young people, we wish to say, look at the generations that preceded you. They are rethinking their position. Everything we do when we look ahead to the future invites us to reinterpret reality with different interpretations. And as was pointed out by previous speakers as well, that we have been reminded by these words about those who have been suffering the most. We can be scientists, we can be spiritual, we can be people of faith, but if we forget the look in the eyes of poor people, we will never see beyond that darkened window. If we look at the world through their eyes, we will understand something more, and we will be able to fully live as witnesses in faith. Thank you once again for your words. And now I would like to call on Olivier Roy, who is a politologist and orientalist from France, but who is a regular presence at our conferences. He is often, let's say, by our side. He's helped us understand our contemporary world. He's an expert in comparative religion and the Orient and Islam. He has tackled the challenge of globalization, the debate on terrorism, the contemporary implications of Islam, and there is a volume, Blessed Ignorance, which has addressed the problem of violent radicalism and fundamentalism in all faith communities, be they Islamic, Christian, or others. He has worked as an advisor for a number of important organizations and been involved in research and cooperation projects. Over to you. Thank you very much for having joined us, Olivier. I will be speaking in French. One of the most common themes addressed by politicians these days is identity. And identity presumes that there is something that a group of people share, a society, a country, a region. Therefore, there is a we or an us behind that identity. But this is often juxtaposed to the concept of they or them. So there is a collection of us as opposed to an interaction among different, let's say, communities. However, we need to understand that populist parties are not the only ones to talk about identity in contemporary debate. The European Union, a year or two, created a commission to defend, I quote, the European way of life, end of quote. So according to the European Commission, there is a European we. But what is the content of this European we? And what do we mean by a way of life? Do we have such a thing as a European way of life? Well, this decision to promote a European way of life strives to take a more ethical approach. And this commission is based on values such as democracy, rule of law, and freedom. These are values that are claimed to underlie the European way of life. But the problem is that these values are not peculiar to Europe. Everywhere, anywhere around the world can relate to democracy, rule of law, and freedom. Afghani or Syrian refugees surely share the same values: democracy, rule of law, and freedom. And hence the decision to choose this name for the Commission is political. There is the idea that we have to defend this identity in Europe, amongst other things, in order to limit migrations. Otherwise, why not talk about universal values? Why not simply say that Europe is based on universal values? Because the very notion of value inevitably brings to mind something that goes beyond who we are. Values always call into play ideals, and obviously ideals are never inert. They are always a projection that goes beyond who we are and what we are. And identity is not therefore based on values. Values are always those elements that go beyond us. And why, therefore, doesn't the Commission talk about European values rather than talk about European way of life? There is a very simple reason. In Europe, we don't agree on these concepts. Now, when Pope Paul VI wrote Humanae Vitae, he opposed the let's say, appearance of a new system of values in Europe that are dominant, the values of sexual freedom or, let's say, delinking between sexuality and procreation, or new concept of family. These values are now currently enshrined in most of the legislations in place in European countries, and yet the Catholic Church and other communities, intellectuals, philosophers are against these values. So there is no consensus, in fact, on European values. There is no agreement on how to define life. There is no agreement on the notion of hospitality. Nor is there a common view on the concept of compassion towards others. And all popes have, in fact, referred to what Pope Benedict talked about in terms of non-negotiable principles. So, in fact, there is no such thing as a set of common values that all Europeans accept and live by. So, of course, politicians will talk about the Christian identity of Europe, but those who refer to the Christian identity of Europe never make reference to the Christian faith or to Christian values, but simply reference is made to a common past which no longer embodies a vision of the future. Now, one cannot define an identity on the basis of faith, because we know that very few in Europe are believers, and we know that there is a sense of rejection of what is finite and the need to rejoice in what we are. Faith always projects beyond us. There can be a community of people who share the same faith, but there can be no such thing as an identity based on faith. Unless, of course, we have a narcissistic relationship with our individual faith, which is only considered as a good that must be protected against everyone else. Hence, if in this reference to the European way of life, there are no specifically European values, if there is no explicit reference to Christianity, what is this European way of life? Well, in every country, there are, in fact, a myriad of different markers. In France, for instance, a populist movement organized public events defined as sausage and red wine aperitifs. In France, you drink red wine and eat sausages. Well, certainly, if that's the case, I am French. But when you organize public events entitled sausages and red wine, that, by definition, excludes the participation of Muslims and Jews. So this means choosing cultural markers that ultimately are markers of exclusion. And therefore, there is no culture involved with this style or way of life. Identity is the repetition of what we think we have always been, without the cultural dynamism which has inspired our ancestors. And this kind of identity is no more than folklore. The European way of life is no more than folklore. And is it worthwhile including this as one of the European values? Frankly, I don't think that makes any sense. And another paradox in this reference to European identity is that the rights of the individual, the notion of individual, is juxtaposed to the presumed, communitarism of other cultures. But in order to talk about a European we are basically assuming that we are a group of people who come together, and this means denying the individuality that is presumably at the heart of our very culture. And we basically are wiping out our history, the diversity of our society, and the importance of the wars and conflicts that have turned Europe into what it is today. Indeed, identity does not recognize individuals, and it cancels individuals and privileges superficial characteristics such as a European way of life, which identifies an individual with the group he or she belongs to, without recognizing individuality. We have to recognize in others an individual quality, and that is what is lacking in our current concept of identity, which is simply withdrawal from the world and an inward-looking approach. Thank you for your attention.
Professor Roy.
Thank you very much, Professor Roy, and your critique of this superficial ideological we points to the need to recognize the I in the us. And if we think about Europe, Europe is not homogeneous, nor has it ever been. Consolidated identities are the result of conflicts, confrontations, and a web of relations. And therefore, the aim must be that of including others, recognizing their differences, and this helps us understand ourselves. Nobody can claim that he or she is the result of a pure tradition. Even Christian denominations have, in fact, evolved over the centuries on the basis of differences. So what will the Europe, Asia, and Africa of the future be like? This question is too big for us, but that is a mistake. We need to understand what kind of a future we want. And we are questioned on this, and this is our responsibility. Thank you so much, Professor Roy, and I must apologize on behalf of everybody for the fact that I'm handing the floor to the only woman on the panel, and we apologize for that. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. And it's not my fault that you are last to speak, but we chose alphabetical order, and your surname starts with a V. We also think, however, that Lakshmi Vyas, who is president of the Hindu Forum of Europe, has a lot to say. And we also feel that a female, let's say, contribution is fundamental for our world, because the most brutal aspects of our human nature tend to be male. We have to include the female qualities of our humankind and explain that we all need each other. And I would like to say a few words about Lakshmi. The world of the Hindu diaspora is multifaceted, and Dr. Vyas serves the many communities of the diaspora so that they may find a unity of vision, particularly in the UK and then in the European Parliament. Thank you very much, Lakshmi, and we look forward to hearing your remarks. Thank you.
Honorable dignitaries and brothers and sisters, I'm really honored to be here to talk to you on widening the horizon and rediscovering others. Namaste to all of you. Widening the horizon and rediscovering the others is the need of the day. In other words, it is self-renewal and mental expansion to know more about everything, including human beings and all parts of this planet. When you look at the horizon, it looks wonderful. But if you continue to look at it, it gets tedious, and you want to see more or seek expansion. For all of us as leaders, the meaning is craving expansion. This craving for expansion may be more intense in some than in others, but it is in all of us. Unless there is a variation in our viewpoint, we become bored sooner and or later. How wonderful it would be if all of us could connect with each other, irrespective of the differences, be it language, color, dressing, eating, or living habits. That can be called a united world. It sounds like a dream, but if we all work together in that direction, it can come true. So, what do? We must widen our horizon and think beyond our limits and try to rediscover others. It means to create more options to de-narrow one's focus. It means to learn more and open oneself to other things rather than to stick to one singular perspective. To broaden means to widen the length, width or girth, and horizon is the limit to which one can see the boundary between the earth and the sky due to the curvature of the earth. If one's figurative boundary is narrow, too focused, there is only one outcome. To open that up by learning or just keeping an open mind, that figurative boundary widens and creates new perspectives and therefore new options. So what do? Step outside your comfort zone and connect with people in different communities. This may require some boldness, be it a bit harder for the introvert types, but it can be very interesting. Secondly, you can go to a restaurant that serves a type of food you have never tried before. Your eyes may be opened up not only by the taste of the food, but also by the ambience. And the last one is the volunteer to help an organization that could use some help. Doing so not only makes you feel good about what you're doing, but also brings you into contact with people whom you have never met. Cultural diversity in Europe should be taken as an advantage and celebrated instead of being seen as a negative thing. There is a need for more opportunities to learn about people from other cultures in Europe, and the governments have an important influencing role to help establish or facilitate frameworks to aid discovering others. Valuing multiculturalism is an important aspect for rediscovering others. Migrants and refugees can have misconceptions or misunderstandings regarding the laws, the customs, the conditions in their host country. These gaps can be reduced by promoting their participation. Moreover, their full non-intervention in decisions that have an impact on their lives. My request to each and every person, mix with a variety of people much different from you, may be difficult in the beginning, but it is very important for religious leaders, political leaders, and managers to know different kind of people and rediscover your relationship and make this world a happy place for everyone. Valuing multiculturalism is an important aspect for rediscovering others. I know it may seem difficult for the Western world, but unless these drastic changes take place, this world is not going to be the best place to live in unity. Look at the animals. The giraffe helps the goat, the elephant carries lion's cubs, protecting it from heat, the crocodile saves a dog, and n number of such examples can be given. Why not us? As human beings, we have a brain to talk, so why can't we be so? We are happy to travel around the world to different lands, oceans, atmospheres, planets. We have not even spared the moon. Why not the global citizens? Unless the whites accept the blacks, the browns and yellows, this world will continue the way it is. Think beyond the horizon and rediscover how this place can be more beautiful. Leaders, make someone happy and be empathetic and watch how you feel. When you make someone happy, the feeling you get is beyond explanation. It is blissful, satisfying, and can cure several ailments, and it also activates the adrenal glands. Try and experience it. The white superiority will continue. It is difficult to disappear. This aspect needs to be taken care of to rediscover beyond the horizons. Sometimes it is nice to imagine how stress-free life would be if everyone else was the same as us in this world, but it is not. We avoid people or ways of thinking that are different from our own. Try taking the opposite approach and and feel how it is different, and this will help to remove the negativity if you took a positive approach. So remove negativity. Family is the foundation of good character. When children do not get love at home, they seek fulfillment in other self-destructive and antisocial behaviors. Family building leads to nation building, and nation building leads to global unity building. Humility, respect to parents, fidelity in marriage, loyalty, public service, and love others. As you love yourself, you will rediscover yourself and others. Here I remember the sentence, "Don't be a frog in the well." The frog in the well assumes that its tiny world, that's all there is, and there is no idea about its true size of the world. It is only when a passing turtle tells the frog of the great ocean outside the frog, it realizes that there is much more to the world than it had known. All of us are like a frog in the well. We grow up as members of culture and learn through direct and indirect teaching to see the world from the perspective that becomes familiar to us. Because the people around us they share the same perspective, we seldom have cause to question it. Like the frog, we rarely suspect how big and diverse our human species is. So wake up. Don't be a frog in the well. Expand your horizon and rediscover others. Always promote positivity, remove negativity, and lastly, it is the role of all to promote tolerance, open-mindedness, respect for difference, and others' values. Let us all live together happily in this world by protecting each other, the environment, and this planet. Thank you very much.
Grazie. Grazie, Lakshmi.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi, for having helped us understand how to respond without forgetting that we are part of the universe. We do not want to be predators. We do not want to be the masters of the universe. You used an English expression, how to de-narrow our focus. It's difficult to translate. We don't want to be slaves of a narrow focus. We want to broaden and enlarge our focus. How can we do this? Well, meeting men and women, meeting peoples, meeting the universe, a real meeting. We're not speaking fine theories here. We are truly willing to build a better future. We wanted to identify new paths for the future. So thank you very much for your contribution, and I would like to thank all the rapporteurs who have been so disciplined in keeping to the time limits which were given them. And now we have some members from foreign delegations and from Italian delegations alike who have asked to take the floor. This was possible. So comments could be made or questions could be addressed. And anyone wishing, therefore, to speak, please come to the podium, and you only have 3 minutes each, or even less. Rav Benedetto Carucci Viterbi, we would like to greet him with affection. He's the head of the Jewish school. We also have Cardinal Jose Tolentino da Mendoza. We would like to say goodbye to him because he's had to leave us early. Rabbi Benedetto Carucci Viterbo is playing a crucial role for the Jewish community in Italy and not only there. I will only make a very short comment in response to the many interesting things I've heard this morning. There is a rabbi teaching which says more or less, if I only am for myself, well, let me put this better. If I'm not for myself, who am I? But if I'm only for myself, what am I? So I think it's a very important and enlightening expression. I think it teaches us something. As several speakers said, you need to find the right balance between individuals and community, between collectivity, community and freedom. So the first step is an identification. If I'm not myself, who is for myself? And this is something we cannot do without. You need to have an identity. You need to be aware of the fact that you are an individual. This is not something that can be done without or erased. But the next step is, if I'm just for myself, what am I? And words are important here. What am I, not who am I, because you become a thing if you're just for yourself. In the Jewish tradition, the world of things, the mineral world, is a silent, a muted world. So I think this is precisely the issue. Men speak because they are in a relationship with each other. So the process that we need to imagine is a process where we can identify ourselves as individuals. So we need to know who we are, but we cannot be content with being muted objects. We must forge a relationship, but we must have an interaction. So the pandemic should have taught us something. We were locked down in our homes, and perhaps there was an opportunity to take the initial step to go and find ourselves, because sometimes we lose ourselves. But at this point, we now need to think of how to have a relationship with others, so we can rebuild ourselves. Because we have understood that if we do not interact with others, we are merely things and not human beings.
Grazie, vorrei invitare.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to ask Monsignor Benomian Barros to speak as bishop in the Diocese of Rome, is head of charity, the migrants pastoral care and the missionary office of the diocese. Thank you very much. He's a dear friend of mine. I think it's the first time you are attending one of our meetings, so we look forward to hearing what he has to say.
Si prepara, chiedo scusa, vorrei chiedere
I would like to ask Shote Menegishi to get ready to come to the podium immediately afterwards. Thank you, everyone, and let me also thank the speakers that we heard today. I have a rhetorical question to ask you. The title of our forum is Rediscovering. ourselves and others. Have we lost something then that we need to rediscover? Well, after having listened to all the previous speakers, we have had to accept humbly that we have lost who we are. And I am very happy that we have so many young people present today, because they encourage us to take new paths and to challenge our pre-established ideas and understanding who we truly are. Now, we have understood in these recent times that we have all suffered an evil fate. We've all discovered that we are weak, that we are fragile, that we are not masters of our destiny, and this was the experience that we all had during the pandemic. And our hope was that there could be a way out given to us thanks to science. We were looking for a savior. We were looking for someone or something that could help us find a way out. And then at some point, it is as if we no longer felt the fact that we were united in our sufferings and in our problems. This is a lesson which, however, ought to be remembered. It's a fine lesson that we learned from the pandemic. We've all suffered a common fate. We have all suffered a common problem, and yet we were united in our suffering. And if we are united, we can rise to the challenge and not be overwhelmed by these challenges. And the second thing I'd like to say is something which relates to a specific letter of the alphabet, the letter D. I met someone here in Rome, and we met one evening, and he said to me, "Father, there is a huge paradox here. I'm really concerned, I'm very worried." And I said, "Why are you so worried?" And he said, "How can we possibly reconstruct the meaning of language? Today, in order to be positive, you need to be negative. And if you're negative, you need to be positive." He was referring to the COVID tests. And he said, "I know how we got to this surreal situation." Why? Well, because we removed the letter D. And if you take D away from the Italian word Dio, God, you're left with the Italian word Io, I-O, I. So if you forget about God and all that is left is yourself, you have a problem, because the only thing that can give unity to people is the divine person. So if God is at the center of this world of ours, we can truly understand and re-establish the human dimension of every person on earth. So thank you very much for this forum, which can help us rediscover this us.
Grazie a Monsignor Ambarus.
Soten Menegishi is the director of the European office for the Soto Zen from Japan, and he has been a good friend for many years. We're delighted he's back. We hope to see him again in the future as well. You have 3 minutes.
At the outset, I beg you my poor English. After listening to each special speaker, what I'd like to tell you now is this kind of dialogue must be continuing, because we can deepen and make wide our thinking only by the encounter with others. And to understand others is to understand oneself. When we stay only within our traditional perspective, then we cannot discover not only others but also ourselves too. I suppose the dialogue must be a kind of greeting that one comes to the neighbors one step near opening one's heart and become intimate each other like us doing by the community of Sant'Egidio. I guess only this attitude can open our spirituality in which we can live as true independent. The theme of last year of your meeting was "No one saved alone." I'd like to say this year, no one lived alone. Can I understand my English? Can you understand my English? Okay, thank you.
Di Shoten Minegishi, ma anche il suo pensiero.
We would like to thank you for this contribution. And now we have the next speaker, the Orthodox Metropolitan. We met 25 years ago, and with him we prepared for Pope John Paul II's visit when Theotokos was the Patriarch.
Thank you, moderator, Your Holiness, my dear friends. I hope you understand that if I don't speak 3 minutes, but only 3 minutes and 20 seconds or 10 seconds, you will be generous to accept me. First of all, I would like to bring the message of peace and good greetings of the Patriarch of Romanian Orthodox Church, Daniel. So I'm very happy to represent him and the Romanian Orthodox Church at this important meeting. What I would like to say that the Christian Church has always recognized and revealed the centrality of peace, but pay attention, together with justice in people's lives. The very revelation of Christ is characterized as a gospel of peace. The Christian Church considers as her duty to encourage all that which genuinely serves the cause of peace and paves the way to justice, fraternity, freedom, and mutual love among all children of the one Heavenly Father, as well as between all peoples who make up the one human family. We should suffer with all people who in various parts of the world are deprived of the benefits of peace and justice. The Christian Church condemns war categorically, considering it as a consequence of the presence of evil and sin in the world. Every war threatens to destroy creation and life. That is why the Christian Church supports all initiatives and efforts to prevent or avert wars through dialogue and every other viable means. The Church condemns all the conflicts and wars provoked by fanaticism that might derive from, God forbids, religious principles. That is why it's necessary to develop and strengthen the interfaith and international relations, thus contributing to the resolutions of problems. Having said that, we should be aware that instances of disrespectful, at times even blasphemous, attitudes towards religious values are cause for particular concern, thus arousing division and conflict in society. The people of faith should be aware about the risk of their conscience being negatively influenced by the mass media, sometimes manipulating rather than bringing people and nations together in order to avoid conflicts and even war. I would say, by conclusion, in these times of secularization, marked by a spiritual crisis characteristic of contemporary civilization, it is absolutely necessary to emphasize the significance of life's sacredness. People of peace and justice will never promote actions that destroy human lives and God's creation. In our times, just as throughout history, the prophetic and pastoral voice of our Christian religion appeals to the heart of humankind, calling us to embrace, as the Bible says, the truth, justice, purity, and love as the only way to a world of peace, freedom, and love among peoples and between nations. We are very grateful and should congratulate the Comunità di Sant'Egidio for the wonderful and very efficient role it plays for promoting interfaith dialogue in practical terms, harmony and peace in the world. That was 3 minutes, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Grazie, grazie mille.
Sei sicura? So thank you very much. Amber Paula, can he please join us? A voice from Africa. He is a bishop of the Egyptian Coptic Orthodox Church, but he's not just that. He's a friend, and we are happy to give him the floor and look forward to hearing what he has to say.
The speakers, and especially Dr. Nubar. Your group saved hundreds of millions, and I am one of them because I got Moderna vaccine last June. I have 2 examples: the symphony, the human body. Most of us like to listen to the symphony or the choirs. Why is the symphony considered great? One, there are many instruments and different music players. Different instruments producing different sounds. The harmony among the different players and different sounds. Training and the mutual work for a very long time. A skillful maestro leading the orchestra. About the human body, why is the human body considered powerful? A lot of organs and parts. Those parts are different from each other, yet they cooperated and work harmoniously together. The master is an invisible mind leading the whole system. On a humanistic level, we need to come closer to each other in order to discover the other from a closer viewpoint, which would lead to cooperation even when we see our differences, cultural, historical, dogmatic, and religious. No one will change the other, and we should not have this in mind. We would not be completely unified, yet we can absolutely fully cooperate and work together. With the grace of God, we look forward to having integrative rather than clashing differences. I'll give you an Egyptian example. In Egypt, we cooperate with each other. 4 years ago, in my diocese, we lost 30 of our young deacons. While we were celebrating the Mass of Palm Sunday, we suffered from terrorists, but we have to open our arms, to open our hearts. For that, 2 years ago, I started to establish a very big project for serving our brothers and sisters of suffering. But this project will give the service of hosting and services for free for all the people regarding everything. That's something of cooperation. Now, we have to cooperate together to face our 4 enemies: poverty, war, disease, and the global warming. I ask the country producing oil, please, please, put a plan to stop producing oil. Don't listen to the industrial country. Try to invest your money in any other way. Here I want to thank Saudi Arabia, Emirates. Why? They are producing oil, but they are investing a lot of money in clean and green energy. Please, we have to cooperate with each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Grazie. Abbiamo 2 interventi, ultimi ci riportano in Asia. Chiedo per...
We have 2 more presentations. I do apologize if I am asking you to keep to the 3 minutes limit, but we need to leave this building at 12. So Felix Machado, Monsignor Machado, is he there?
Non lo vedo. Ah, c'è. Dov'è Felix Machado?
Is Felix Machado here with us? Where is he?
Non so. Sì. Marco
Francione, I know, has seen him. Felix is materializing. I can see him coming down the stairs. Has he been found?
Allora, mentre Monsignor Felix...
Well, as we are awaiting Monsignor Machado, we are just waiting for him to get back to us. Giorgio Raspa from the Buddhist Culture Italian Foundation is asked to take the floor. And thank you for intervening.
Quindi è l'Asia.
So it's Asia in Europe, let's say certain Asian religious traditions in Europe being represented here by our speaker. So thank you very much for this opportunity that you are giving us to be able to briefly take the floor. Well, we are having a very interesting discussion, and this gives me an opportunity to give you a Western/Buddhist viewpoint. And what I can say is that every religion has a wonderful and powerful weapon which could help us to re-establish our interaction with others and our being open to ourselves and to others. It's a spiritual weapon. That is to say, abating and reducing our individualism and our self-centeredness. And this openness means recognize that faith isn't just believing in God or believing in a set of rules, believing in a reward system. It is much more than that. It's trust and service. It is believing in the inner dialogue with the divine, which is in our heart. President Vius was telling us that when we are in touch with other people, we experience happiness and joy. I think this is something that we've all experienced. If we do good, we feel good. If we are in communion with others, this fills us with joy. So we can be able to share joy and sorrow alike with others. And this helps us experience real happiness. And this happiness is the very simple philosophy of our heart and of our mind, when there is loving kindness to all. And this is something that we need to discover. We each follow our path and our beliefs. The religions that we belong to are all able to give us the right spiritual instruments which can help us find this connection. And if this is true, it means that love is the sign that we're all part of something much greater, much bigger. Interdependence is the divine which is in all of us. And this is a message which is simple, but at the same time highly transformational. If we cultivate these inner qualities, if we nourish this dimension, I think we can truly rebuild a universal us. Thank you.
Grazie, credo che questo sia.
Thank you very much. And Monsignor Machado, actually, we're told, is at another panel. Are you tired? Well, I think that the toils of this morning have actually prepared us for more happy, let's say, toil to come. We have learnt from one another. We have understood what the future milestones can be. And yesterday, the Chief Rabbi, the President of the European Rabbis, Pinhas Goldschmidt, reminded us that Jacob removed all of the barriers preventing access to water to make this precious resource available to all. I think that listening to others, imagining a future together, means that we can actually find the necessary resources in our cultures, in our tradition, in our religions, for the benefit of others. We lose nothing when we are prepared to offer what we have, because investing in the future means having an open-minded approach, readiness to look beyond our egos. If we build together a common future, I think all will benefit, and the future of the earth also depends on our ability to make important decisions so that we may work to safeguard this precious good, this earth, and all of the living beings on earth. This is a gift, and we're really encouraged by this forum, by this event, which is part of a broader debate. So allow me to end by thanking you for your presence, for your contributions, be they long or short. Everything is for the common good, and it has to be common in order to be good. So once again, thank you. This afternoon, we will be meeting in prayer. We will be praying with our respective communities before meeting together at the Colosseum, a place which has been said is symbolic, but it is also an indication of our readiness and willingness to listen and to work for the future. I would like to thank those who are here in person and those who have connected. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, thank you.